Wes Anderson is one of the most stylistic directors out there. Take a single frame from any one of his films, especially the more recent ones, and you can immediately tell that it's from one of his movies. There's not many directors out there like that. Another one that comes to mind is Tim Burton. Many other directors have very unique directing, cinematography, and writing styles, but a single frame from one of their films won't give away who directed it based on style alone. Here, let me show you an example. Take a look at this frame. It's immediately obvious that it came from a Wes Anderson film. Or take a look at this picture. Same thing, right? Well, you'd be wrong, because this picture is actually from the book called Accidentally Wes Anderson. My brother bought me this book for my birthday, and it really inspired me and caused me to go down a rabbit hole. It's a book filled with photos from all around the world that just scream the Wes Anderson style. This book is what inspired me to make this video. I wanted to break down what makes a single frame or photo look like it came out of a Wes Anderson movie, and then go out into the world and try to capture a photo myself. And spoiler alert, it was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Symmetry. Wes Anderson regularly uses symmetry to frame his scenes. This symmetry is one of the most iconic parts of his style. The way the sets are designed and the characters are positioned is almost always very symmetrical. Not to the point of it becoming overly annoying though. It is very common for his characters to be positioned closely together in the center of the frame, looking directly at the camera. And when they aren't looking directly at the camera, they are often faced sideways, looking directly at each other to again provide a sense of symmetry. On top of how he positions his characters, the way he films his scenes also lend themselves to being symmetrical. If in one shot someone enters from the left, the next shot will have someone entering from the right or positioned on the right. Over an entire scene, no side of the screen feels heavier than the other. In other words, there is balance. The way Wes Anderson positions his characters and films his scenes is very symmetrical, which results in symmetry being one of the main ways a photo can be accidentally Wes Anderson. But there is so much more to it than just that. Take a look at this photo I took. It is almost 100% symmetrical, but it doesn't look anything like a frame from a Wes Anderson film. So what else do we need? Framing/angles. We already talked about this a bit in the symmetry section, but Wes Anderson has a certain way of framing his shots that give them that distinct style as well. A lot of his shots look like they are taken straight out of some diorama. This is probably why it's a no-brainer for him to also make stop-motion movies, because those movies are basically one big moving diorama. There are directors out there that are praised for the sense of scale they portray on the big screen. Wes Anderson is basically on the complete opposite end of the spectrum in this regard. The way he frames his shots makes everything in them look small. And this isn't by accident either. A lot of the B-roll and transition shots in his movies are made to look like they are from a diorama. A perfect example of this is from the Grand Budapest Hotel, which I actually think is his most stylistic and Wes Anderson-esque film. These transition shots combined with how his scenes are framed make his movies feel like they are taking place in a dollhouse. The symmetry and color, which we'll talk about in a sec, help sell this effect as well. In the previous section of this video, we talked about how Wes Anderson uses a lot of symmetry in his films and how his shots are balanced throughout the scenes. And one of the things that Wes Anderson does very well is put the focus of each scene in the center of the screen. This isn't so much about symmetry, but about how he frames his shots and designs his sets. Just take a look at these frames. This takes a lot of planning and attention to detail to execute correctly, but when done properly, it enhances the viewing experience of the film. When watching a movie, the viewer's vision shouldn't have to hop around from one side of the screen to the other. The editing and scene progression should guide the viewer to the part of the screen where they should be looking. An amazing example of this is from the movie Mad Max Fury Road. We talk more about this in our video about what makes a movie look beautiful. Check it out if you haven't seen it already. Wes Anderson does the same thing, but instead of having the action and movement of the characters direct your vision to where the next scene's focal point will be, he instead designs his shots where it feels like your eyes naturally gravitate towards the center of the screen. It makes watching his films easy to follow along with. Okay, so let's add the things I just mentioned to the photos I'm trying to capture. Now, it's beginning to look much better, but there is still something really big missing for me to be able to take my photo and say that it looks like it was taken from a Wes Anderson film. Colors. Colors, or more specifically color palettes, are very important in setting the tone of a film. And Wes Anderson is a master of color. Each of his movies has a very distinct and prominent color palette. When you think of the Grand Budapest Hotel, what do you think? It's probably something like this: pastel or muted pinks, deep royal purples, and vibrant reds, among a few other colors. When you think of the movie The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, the colors that come to mind are very vibrant blues, vibrant, almost overly saturated oranges, and deep, darker blues. Each movie that Wes Anderson films has a very distinct and prominent color palette throughout its entirety. And overall, the colors that he chooses to use are very vibrant, saturated yet somewhat muted, as contradictory as it sounds, but think of the mustard yellows from the Royal Tennenbaums or even the pinks from the Grand Budapest Hotel. They're saturated yet pastel-like. He also has a pretty limited spectrum of colors that he uses. It's very meticulous, but most of his films tend to overlap with colors, which lead to the iconic and very recognizable Wes Anderson style. You might have a different opinion, but the colors that stand out to me the most as being Wes Anderson are the yellows, pinks, blues, and sometimes the reds. Of course, there are many more colors that he uses, but even when browsing through the book Accidentally Wes Anderson, the photos that make good use of the yellows, pinks, and blues are the ones that look more like frames from a Wes Anderson film than the others. So my next step was to go out into the world and try to make a photo that was both symmetrical and had the colors of a Wes Anderson film. And lo and behold, it started to look a lot more promising. Although it still felt like something was missing. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it was pretty difficult to capture even a single photo that looked like it came from a Wes Anderson film. I'm not an amazing photographer by any means. I would actually consider myself more of a hobbyist than even an amateur. But after spending hours of planning and driving around taking photos, it was still very difficult. Wes Anderson is one of my favorite directors. Not just because of how his movies look, but also because of the stories he tells and the unique ways he is able to tell them. His films have a sense of innocence and quirkiness to them that add to their overall charm. I posted the photos I took for this video on my Vero account, which I included a link to in the description. And I'd love to see the photos that you took that might look like they came from a Wes Anderson film, so make sure to leave a comment below for where I can check them out. There's also a great subreddit called r/accidental Wes Anderson that showcases a bunch of them in case you need some inspiration. So go check it out, I'll also leave a link below in the description. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. We have a ton of great videos in the works and wouldn't want you to miss out, so until next time, have a good one.